A whisper of wind often carried the scent of rain, but today it brought only the dry dust of a long, unforgiving summer. The small, sun-baked town lay quiet, its streets cracked like ancient pottery, its storefronts faded memories of better times. Here, amongst the quiet decay, lived a girl named Lily. She was a slip of a thing, all wide, watchful eyes and a spirit that glowed softly, like a lantern in a forgotten room. Lily was 11, and life had etched lines of worry on her young face that belonged on an older woman. Her grandmother, a woman whose body was failing but whose spirit remained a fierce, stubborn flame, was her world. Their small, painted house, once vibrant with laughter, now leaned tiredly against the indifferent sky, its roof a sieve against the coming autumn rains. Debts, like thorny vines, choked their every waking moment, and the school year ahead loomed, a mountain of unpaid fees and worn-out books. Lily knew her grandmother's quiet sighs better than she knew the latest pop songs. She carried the weight of their world on her slender shoulders, a silent promise to protect the woman who had nurtured her. Their days were a rhythm of quiet struggle. The old well, their only source of water, often ran dry, forcing long, weary walks to the communal pump at the edge of town. Lily's school uniform, carefully mended countless times, spoke of dignity maintained against steep odds. Her classmates, mostly unaware of the quiet battles fought within the walls of their homes, sometimes looked at her with pity, sometimes with the casual cruelty of childhood. But Lily held her head high, her gaze steady, her heart a secret garden of resilient hope. The sun, a relentless forge in the sky, beat down on the parched highway that skirted the town. Heat shimmered above the asphalt, distorting the horizon into a watery mirage. It was a day when even the bravest birds sought the deepest shade, and the air itself seemed to gasp for breath. On this particular afternoon, a solitary figure emerged from the shimmering distance, a dark silhouette against the blinding light. He was a biker, his machine a thunderous beast that seemed to swallow the miles with a hungry growl. His leather vest, adorned with patches that spoke of long roads and fierce loyalties, was dust-caked and faded. A massive, weathered man, his face a roadmap of hard living, he guided his motorcycle with the weary precision of one who had seen too many sunrises from the saddle. But even titans of the road falter. His engine, after a final, sputtering cough, died with a sigh, leaving him stranded on the desolate shoulder, miles from anywhere. The silence that followed was immense, broken only by the chirping of unseen insects and the rhythmic hiss of cooling metal. He dismounted, his movements stiff, his eyes scanning the empty road for a sign of salvation. Thirst, a raw, burning claw, gripped his throat. His water bottle lay empty, a cruel joke in the blistering heat. He was a king brought low, a warrior without his weapon, a man utterly at the mercy of the elements. Lily, on her way home from fetching water at the pump, saw him. Her small bucket, heavy with the precious liquid, clanked softly against her leg. She knew the stories, the whispers that clung to men like him, tales of danger and darkness. Her grandmother had warned her, gently but firmly, to avoid strangers, especially those who rode iron horses and wore the symbols of the road. Her first instinct, a primal flicker of fear, urged her to quicken her pace, to avert her eyes, to disappear into the anonymity of the dusty roadside. But then she saw his face. Not the tattoos, not the hardened jaw, not the piercing gaze, but the subtle tremor in his hand as he wiped a bead of sweat from his brow. She saw the dust on his lips, the way his eyes, despite their fierceness, darted towards her bucket with a desperate, almost pleading thirst. In that moment, he was not a biker, not a stranger, but simply a man in need, a man suffering under the same cruel sun that beat down on her own small world. Her heart, so often a sanctuary for the forgotten, stirred. The water in her bucket, though hard-won and precious, suddenly felt less like a burden and more like a gift. She hesitated, her small frame caught between the echoes of caution and the insistent tug of compassion. It was a battle fought in the silent space of a single breath. Then, without a word, she began to walk towards him. His eyes, sharp and wary, followed her every step. He watched her approach, a small, determined figure against the vast, empty backdrop. He expected fear, perhaps even revulsion. He certainly did not expect kindness. As she drew closer, he saw the simple, clean lines of her worn uniform, the earnestness in her young eyes. She stopped a few feet from him, the bucket still clutched in her hand. Her voice, when it came, was soft but clear, untouched by fear. "Sir," she said, her head tilted slightly, "you look very thirsty." He stared at her, a flicker of surprise softening the hard edges of his face. He had faced down men twice his size, ridden through storms that would break lesser souls. But this simple offer from a child caught him utterly off guard. He cleared his throat, a rough sound. "Yes, little one, I am." Without another word, Lily knelt, carefully placed the bucket on the ground, and scooped a generous portion of water into her cupped hands. She held it out to him, her gaze unwavering. He hesitated for a moment. Then, with a nod that was almost imperceptible, he took the water from her hands, his rough fingers brushing against her small, soft ones. He drank, deeply, gratefully, the cool liquid of balm to his parched throat. He took another, then another, until the burning sensation receded, replaced by a profound sense of relief. "Thank you," he said, his voice a low rumble, the words tasting strange on his tongue, and used as he was to such simple, unearned grace. He looked at the half-empty bucket, then back at her. "That was your water, wasn't it?" Lily nodded. "It's a long walk to the pump," she admitted, a faint blush rising on her cheeks. "But Grandma says when you can help, you help." "That's it." He regarded her for a long moment, his eyes, dark and knowing, searching hers. He saw no expectation, no desire for reward, only the quiet sincerity of a pure heart. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out a handful of crumpled bills. "Here," he said, extending them to her, "for your kindness, and for your walk back." Lily shook her head, a gentle but firm refusal. "No, sir. Grandma says kindness isn't something you sell." She picked up her bucket, now significantly lighter, and offered him a small, shy smile. "I hope your motorcycle gets fixed soon." With that, she turned and continued her journey home, a small, solitary figure receding into the shimmering heat. The biker watched her go, the dust of the road settling around his boots. The weight of her simple act, the unburdened purity of her compassion, felt heavier than any burden he had ever carried. He was a man of the road, a figure of fear and respect, but in that moment, he felt a profound humility. He knew then that he had encountered something rare and precious, a truth whispered by a child in a forgotten town. He would not forget. He could not. The sun dipped towards the horizon, painting the sky in hues of fire and bruised purple. Lily walked home, the memory of the encounter already fading into the quiet rhythm of her days. She helped her grandmother prepare their meager supper, the warmth of the small kitchen a familiar comfort. The biker, a fleeting shadow, was already a distant memory, another face in the long parade of life's anonymous passers-by. But for the biker, whose name was Silas, the encounter was anything but fleeting. He eventually got his bike running, a minor electrical issue yielding to his practiced hands. He rode on, but the image of the small girl, her earnest eyes, her cupped hands offering water, remained vivid in his mind. It was a seed planted in the hardened earth of his soul, a seed of pure, unadulterated goodness. That night, in the smoky confines of a roadside tavern miles away, Silas sat with his brothers, the roar of their motorcycles a familiar lullaby outside. He was a man of few words, known for his stoic silence, but tonight he spoke. He recounted the story of the small town, the broken-down bike, the scorching sun, and the child who offered her last drops of water without a hint of hesitation or expectation. He described her worn uniform, the quiet dignity in her eyes, the simple wisdom of her grandmother's words. His words, usually gruff and clipped, carried an unusual reverence. The other bikers, a collection of grizzled faces and hardened hearts, listened in silence. They were men bound by a code, a fierce loyalty to their own, and an unspoken understanding of the world's harsh realities. They recognized the purity of the act Silas described. They understood the profound significance of a kindness given when there was nothing to gain and everything to lose. The story spread like wildfire through their network, whispered from one chapter to another, carried on the wind of their roaring engines. It wasn't just a story. It was a testament, a challenge, a call to arms. A child forgotten by the world had shown them the very essence of their own unspoken creed: loyalty, honor, and the unwavering belief that a debt, once incurred, must always be repaid. Days turned into weeks. Lily's life continued its quiet, challenging course. The school year began, a fresh wave of anxiety washing over her and her grandmother. The leaky roof dripped with the first autumn rains, a constant reminder of their precarious existence. The old house groaned under the weight of their worries, its timbers sighing in unison with her grandmother's tired breath. Lily tried to be brave, to smile, to hide the growing knot of fear in her stomach. But the shadow of debt, of failing health, of a future uncertain, loomed larger with each passing day. One crisp autumn morning, a Tuesday, the air was still and held the promise of a clear, bright day. Lily was at school, sitting in her classroom, trying to focus on the teacher's lesson about ancient civilizations. Her mind, however, kept drifting to the leaky bucket in the kitchen, to the bills piled silently on the counter at home. Suddenly, a low rumble began, a distant vibration that seemed to tickle the very foundations of the school. It was a sound unlike any the quiet town had ever heard, a deep, primal thrum that grew steadily, relentlessly. It swelled from a murmur to a growl, then to a thunderous roar that shook the windows and rattled the very bones of the old building. Children looked up, their eyes wide with a mixture of curiosity and alarm. Teachers paused, their words caught in their throats. The sound intensified, becoming an overwhelming, ground-shaking symphony of power and metal. It was the sound of hundreds, perhaps 1,000, engines, all roaring in unison, a mechanical beast awakening from a long slumber. Outside, the world was transforming. A vast, dark river of steel and leather was pouring into the small town. Motorcycles, gleaming chrome and black paint, stretched for what seemed like miles, a seemingly endless procession filling the main street, turning corners and finally converging on the school itself. It was an army on wheels, a disciplined, formidable force, its ranks stretching as far as the eye could see. The sight was terrifying. The townspeople, accustomed to the sleepy rhythm of their lives, stared in disbelief and then in mounting panic. Shopkeepers locked their doors, pulling down blinds with trembling hands. Children, released from their classrooms by bewildered teachers, ran home, their terrified cries echoing through the streets. The air thrummed with the sheer, overwhelming presence of the bikers, their faces mostly hidden behind dark helmets, their leather vests a uniform of intimidating unity. Lily, standing at the classroom window, felt a cold dread grip her heart. Her mind, racing, connected the dots with a sickening certainty. The biker, the water. This must be the consequence. She had made a terrible mistake. Her small act of kindness, born of a pure heart, had somehow brought this terrifying invasion to their doorstep. Her grandmother's warnings echoed in her ears, now a prophecy fulfilled. She felt a profound and crushing guilt, believing she had brought ruin upon her beloved grandmother and their struggling town. The bikers continued their advance, a relentless tide of chrome and sound. They circled the school, a protective, yet menacing, cordon. Then, with a sudden, synchronized command that rippled through their ranks, every engine fell silent. The roar died, replaced by an unnerving, profound quiet. The air, which had vibrated with sound, now held only the heavy stillness of anticipation. From the head of the formation, a single figure dismounted. It was Silas, his imposing frame now unmistakable even without his helmet. He walked with a deliberate, unhurried pace towards the school's front entrance, his eyes scanning the windows, searching. The silence was absolute, broken only by the nervous chatter of birds and the distant, frantic barking of a dog. Then, in a gesture that rippled through the entire contingent, every biker removed their helmet in perfect unison. A sea of weathered faces, some stern, some etched with lines of a life lived hard, were revealed. They held their helmets in the crook of their arms, their eyes fixed on Silas. Then, as one, they bowed their heads. It was a gesture of profound respect, of silent reverence. Silas reached the school steps. His gaze found Lily, still standing at the window, her face pale with fear, her eyes wide and tear-filled. He offered her a small, almost imperceptible nod. Then his voice, though still rough, carried across the silent yard, amplified by the sheer stillness of the moment. "Little one," he began, his voice cutting through the tension, "you offered me water when my throat was dust. You offered kindness when I had nothing to give in return. You show me the heart of a true warrior, a pure soul." He paused, his eyes sweeping over the assembled bikers, then back to Lily. "My grandma," he continued, a faint, almost tender smile touching his lips, said, "When you can help, you help. That's it. And my brothers, they live by that code. We owe you a debt, little one. A debt of honor, freely given, and now freely repaid." Lily's terror, a suffocating weight, began to dissolve, replaced by a wave of disbelief, then awe, then an overwhelming, tearful relief. The bikers were not here to harm them. They were here for her. The realization washed over her, a warm current after a long, cold fear. The school principal, a man who had been a trembling bundle of nerves moments before, stepped forward cautiously. "Sir," he stammered, what is all this?" Silas turned to him, his expression serious. "We heard about the girl, about her grandmother, about their struggles. We heard about the leaky roof, the unpaid bills, the quiet fight they've been fighting alone. We heard about a child who gave her last drops of water to a stranger. Tonight, we feed you forever." With a signal from Silas, the silent army stirred. It was not chaotic, but a coordinated, disciplined movement. Dozens of bikers, their faces now showing determined purpose, dismounted and began to unload their bikes. They carried toolboxes, lumber, bags of cement, roofing shingles, and boxes upon boxes of supplies. Others, with surprising gentleness, carried large, sealed envelopes. They swarmed towards Lily's small, leaning house, not like an invading force, but like a well-oiled machine. Some immediately began repairing the roof, the rhythmic thud of hammers echoing through the suddenly vibrant air. Others descended into the garden, clearing overgrown weeds and planting new, vibrant flowers. Inside, a team of carpenters began reinforcing weak walls, while plumbers worked on the ancient pipes. Electricians, with practiced ease, rewired faulty circuits. Meanwhile, a group of bikers approached the principal, handing him a thick envelope. "For the school," Silas stated, his voice firm. "For every child who needs it. For new books, for hot lunches, for whatever makes this a better place for little ones like Lily." The principal, stunned, could only nod, tears welling in his eyes. Another biker approached Lily's grandmother, who had emerged from the house, leaning heavily on her cane, her face a mixture of bewilderment and profound emotion. He handed her a larger envelope. "Ma'am," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle, "all your debts are paid. Your property taxes, your medical bills, your utilities. Everything. And this," he added, handing her a bank book, "is for your future." From all of us, the old woman, her eyes wide and glistening, sank onto a porch chair, clutching the book like a sacred relic. For Lily, a tailor-made surprise awaited. A group of bikers, their burly forms incongruous with the delicate task, presented her with a brand-new, sturdy bicycle, gleaming red and equipped with a small basket. "So your walk to the pump is a little easier, little one," Silas said, a rare smile gracing his lips. "And so you can ride to school without worry." The entire town watched, mesmerized. What had begun as terror had transformed into awe, then into a profound sense of communal wonder. The perceived villains, the rough and fearsome bikers, were not destroyers, but builders. They were not here to take, but to give, with a generosity that defied all expectation. Prejudices, long held and deeply ingrained, shattered like fragile glass. The quiet, forgotten girl, Lily, once an object of pity, was now the honored center of this extraordinary, heartwarming spectacle. By dusk, Lily's house was transformed. The roof, once leaky and dilapidated, was now sturdy and new. The garden bloomed with freshly planted flowers. Inside, the walls were strong, the pipes silent, the lights bright. It was a home reborn, vibrant and secure. The air, once heavy with the scent of worry, now carried the fresh scent of new wood and clean earth. As the last rays of sunlight faded, the work was done. The bikers gathered again, a silent, disciplined formation. Silas approached Lily, who stood beside her grandmother, both of them still overwhelmed, their hearts overflowing with a gratitude too deep for words. "Our debt is paid," Silas said, his gaze unwavering. "But the bond, little one, that remains." He reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a small, intricately carved wooden bird. He placed it gently in Lily's hand. "This is for you, a symbol of freedom, of kindness, and of a promise. You are part of our family now, Lily. Always." With a final, collective nod, the bikers mounted their machines. The engines roared to life, a powerful, resonant sound that, this time, was not terrifying but uplifting. They rode out of town in the same disciplined formation they had arrived, a river of steel receding into the twilight. As they passed, each biker offered a respectful salute, a final acknowledgement of the extraordinary girl who had taught them all a profound lesson. They left behind not only a rebuilt house and a revitalized school, but a town transformed, its hearts softened, its prejudices shattered. They left behind a legacy of unexpected grace, a testament to the power of a single, selfless act. Lily stood by her newly mended gate, clutching the wooden bird, watching until the last glimmer of chrome disappeared into the distant horizon. Her grandmother, beside her, placed a trembling hand on her shoulder. The world, which had felt so heavy and bleak just days before, now shimmered with a quiet, boundless hope. In the weeks and months that followed, Lily's life and her grandmother's flourished. The new bike made her journeys easier. The security of their home brought a peace they hadn't known in years. The school, bolstered by the bikers' generosity, became a brighter, more nurturing place. Lily, once an unseen good soul, was now a quiet legend, her story whispered with reverence throughout the town. She continued to practice kindness, her heart a wellspring of compassion, now amplified by the understanding that a single act could ripple outwards, changing lives in ways unimaginable. The wooden bird, a constant reminder, sat on her bedside table, a silent guardian. It was a symbol of her courage, of the unexpected family she had found, and of the profound truth that kindness, once given, always finds its way home, often in the most thunderous, magnificent ways. So, what small act of kindness might you perform today? What quiet grace might you offer, without expectation of reward? For in the smallest gestures, the most forgotten corners of the world, lie the seeds of the most extraordinary transformations. Remember Lily, and remember that compassion is never wasted.